Hi, Melissa Crook here, host of the F.E.E.L Podcast. We have a familiar friend back with us this week, our good friend Lana Manikowski. You heard from her a couple of years ago in spring of, I guess it was probably about a year and a half ago now. But she's had a lot happen since then. And when we decided to have her back, she's got a new book. She's got more to share about her impactful and empowering journey through infertility as we listen and get an update today from Lana, Redefining Womanhood, Childless, Not Less, with Lana Manikowski. The ways to engage are as follows. At the end of each day, write down a win for yourself, whether it was completing a difficult project, walking to the coffee shop instead of driving, or even just making it through a trying day in one piece. Recognize and celebrate the progress you are making every single day and do the same for others as well. We hope you find this supportive and helpful as you listen and engage with our good friend Lana Manikowski, Redefining Womanhood, Childless, Not Less Than. Thank you so much for being with us.
Hello and welcome back to the F.E.E.L Podcast today. I'm Melissa Crook, your host, and I've got a friend back here with me that you've heard from before, and she was with us in season 6, and then we got to do a Substack live with her in the spring, and I knew it was time to bring her back because a lot has happened since the last time she was with us. And it's always fun. I like to go back, and when I have return guests, I'm so thankful that we've been in operation long enough now that we can have return guests. But I love going back and listening to our first conversations, and because it also just reminds me of how great those were, and also all the things that have happened in those guest lives since we had those conversations. And I think that that's going to be exactly what happens here today with my friend Lana Manikowski. And Lana describes herself as a connector, collaborator, and passionate. And if you don't remember the first conversation, I do want to put out front because this is a difficult topic for a lot of people, but we're going to talk about the infertility journey today and the life after that and the hope that is possible. And that doesn't mean it's easy. I want to be very, very clear about that with a ton of empathy and understanding that this is not a road that people choose. But Lana has found a way in her own journey to not only find her way through it and love herself where she's at today, but she helps other women as well in even more ways than you heard about the first time. And so she already has amazing resources available at embracinglayers.com on our resources page for season 6. And we get to add to those now because of the things that she continues to learn and the ways she continues to show up for women. Lana, my friend, welcome back to the F.E.E.L Podcast.
Oh, always love our conversations. And thanks for the beautiful introduction.
Absolutely.
And I'm excited to see what we're going to get into today.
I know. It's always kind of fun because I was like, we know each other enough and talk to each other enough. I was like, oh, this will be fun to see where this leads today. Based on what we've talked about before. Okay, we're going to start with prioritizing self-care in your life. And, you're in a busy season right now. You are getting ready in just over a week. You have your big event there in Chicago that you do called the Others Day Brunch, which is such a gift. And we're going to talk about that more because the expansion and growth that has happened with this is really remarkable. And also it's a testament to you and your reach, but also I think is maybe a note to put out in the world that we need more things like this. What if there were support systems like this in cities across the country? What if women weren't required to, not that it's not great to bring women together from all over the world, but what if women can't afford, there's many women that come in from all over for this. What if they can't afford to fly to Chicago to be part of this community? So also, women that are out there listening, if you've been down this road or you're thinking about ways to support in this community, just something to think about. But all that to say, You've got a lot going on, right? You just have brought your book out into the world. You just finished public speaking. You're still doing all the other things you've been doing with the coaching and the podcast and the helping women on this journey. So tell me, my friend, how do you fill your cup these days, and how do you find time for that?
Oh, that's a loaded question because it is a very busy time, and the timing of my book coming out in April, I knew it was going to be close to the Other's Day brunch, but also National Infertility Awareness Week was last week. And it was really important for me to have that book be a resource because I knew that might be the only week that somebody in their life hears infertility being talked about. So I got through launching the book, and then a couple weeks later was National Infertility Awareness Week. And then this year, the Other's Day brunch is on May 10th. So I've definitely been on, I think, a high of just reaching new people. And that's really what keeps me going. And oftentimes the self-care part of it is connecting with someone new or somebody that follows me on Instagram or reaches out because they heard their first episode of the podcast, or just like I had shared with you before we started recording, a woman who randomly came upon a flyer that I left in a local hospital bathroom, women's bathroom, in the hopes that somebody who needed to see it saw it. And she did. And she bought a ticket to the Other's Day brunch. And those are the moments that allow me to say, I am making a difference in this world. And more so, I get really emotional about it because I remember being that person who was just searching for somebody or something that I could feel connected to because my dream of motherhood was not going to be possible. And I felt like everyone around me was figuring it out, and everyone was steps ahead of me. My friends who I thought we were going to raise our kids together and our kids were going to be best friends, like we were best friends. And I felt like the world was passing me by. So it fills my cup to know that there are people who are finding what they need through this girl who grew up in Indiana, who, went to a state school. I didn't have anything more exceptional than anybody else besides the story that I wanted to tell. And that's the difference.
I'm really glad you spoke to that piece of getting that feedback and how that fills you up. That's really, I think that is such a reminder of when your work is in alignment with your soul and with what you're called to do. Because when you do those things, it is a form of filling your cup. You and I were talking about before, when you get that feedback. I had an incident like that myself yesterday, where I got some feedback from people who had been a panelist with us, and they're going to have an episode come out, and we had a very great connection. And something that we talked about as we were preparing, the first time we met, as we were preparing to bring them on our platform, inspired them to write an article about it. And they wrote this article and released it in Psychology Today and quoted me in it. And it was just like, the energy, like I was feeling kind of tired. There's a lot going on right now. And it just filled my whole body with glee. I was like doing a dance party across my room. I all of a sudden was energized through my afternoon workout. And it was just a reminder of like, I'm on the right path. I'm doing the right, I'm in alignment. And so when I talk so much in these episodes about you being in alignment, that is part of your self-care.
I didn't let that moment go without stopping and recognizing how I was feeling. Because I think, I don't know if it's being women where we're just like, okay, notice and move. Yep. Good. Move, go. What's next? What's here? What's there? My life, I'm used to being at a million miles an hour. And I forced myself to sit into my body and feel what was going on in my body. And I was telling my husband, I was like, my body just feels like it's buzzing. Like there was just so much energy flowing through my body. And then I also stopped to say, what brought you here? Like it was a moment to recognize myself, because I think we're often taught not to recognize
Yes.
the good things and how we make a difference. And we're taught, oh, that's boastful, or you don't want to brag about yourself, or, you can't have a great opinion of yourself because people will think you're stuck on yourself.
Yeah.
But who's going to do it? Especially as we become adults. And, I was fortunate to be raised in a family where my parents cheered me on and, tell your kids you're proud of them and recognize what they do. But as you become an adult, you hear less and less of that. So
oh yeah.
I tell my husband, I'll text my husband all the time and be like, I love you. I'm so proud of you. Or if he does something, because his mom has passed away, and I'm like, who's going to tell him as a 55-year-old male that they're proud of him? It's rare that you hear that as we get older. So I think it's really important that we stop and tell ourselves how proud we are of ourselves too.
Yes. I love that you said that. I think that we really, because we get so many of these narratives as we're growing up to not make a stir and to show up for everybody else. And it's okay to celebrate the wins and how we got on the journey, and sitting in that again it goes into that self-care and that recognition of the path we've been on, the journey we've been on, and where it's led us to, and taking that time to reflect. I'm so glad you mentioned that. It's so important. And I think, again, and this is something I've had to work on. I'm very get to the saying, okay, great, what's next? And my therapist really challenged me a couple months ago. She was like, I want you to write down your wins every day. And I was like, she's like, and I'm like, I tell you what, that is a form of self-care. Being able to pull out something from each day was like, okay, amongst all of this, there were still some wins in the day. And that doesn't mean you ignore the stuff that's hard, but it also gets you to focus on what you're doing, how you're showing up in the world, and the wins, and how it's impacting not only yourself, but other people.
My coach has me do, it's called a courage jar. So every time I make a courageous act or do something that puts me out of my comfort zone, or something that, maybe doesn't come as easily to me as other things, I put a jelly bean in. It's funny. I don't know if you know the Good Seasons dressing that comes in, and it has the glass jar that you shake it up in. I use my glass jar, and I put jelly beans in there every time I make a courageous act or an opportunity to recognize me for doing something. So that's been really helpful for me too.
Oh, I love that. So good. All right. This next one, as I was listening back to our last episode, your answer on this was so interesting, but just again pointed to the importance of the work you have done with you before you really started pouring into others. And I think that sometimes we are so busy pouring into others. It's like, have you stopped and taken care of yourself and made sure you were feeling healthy and well, so that you can show up in a healthy and well place for others? So when I asked you last time about confidently setting boundaries, you're like, honestly, I don't have a lot of those because I've done the work. I know my value, and so because of that, I make decisions out of that. And so that kind of naturally creates spaces where they're already naturally in place in your life. You don't have to find new ones, but you really also help the women you work with get to a place where they can do that too. And we talked about that common thing that we see all the time of people walking in a room. If you're a certain age, they're automatically asking you, so do you have children? Or how many children do you have? And you really help women get to a point, and it started with you doing the work first, where that doesn't have to be an uncomfortable question. You really work with women to help them have that foundation in their value. So when people ask questions, and as I say this, people think about what you're asking people before you ask it. I think we need to get rid of the assumption and idea that some of these traditional patterns are still in play. I think we need to quit assuming everyone has children. We need to quit assuming everyone wants to be married. We need to quit assuming that, if you see someone and you think they're pregnant, let them tell you. Don't just assume that they are. There's so many of these things that people will ask, And I'll just be like, oh my God, that's so inappropriate. But to that point, it happens. It happens. It's gonna be, especially if it's people and you haven't seen in a while. So all that to say, you help women really get to a point where this doesn't have to be like, I don't talk about this, or I don't have or I have this padded answer. I'm going to get just, steadfast enough in knowing my own value. My value isn't determined by my roles and my titles. And that includes mom. Talk to me about your own journey with that and how you now help other women with that.
Yeah. So just like you said, for a long time, I'd go to a networking event for work, or I'd meet someone for the first time. And there was this assumption of, how many kids do you have? It wasn't even, do you have kids? It was, so how many kids do you have? And so right off the bat, you feel like an outsider. And it's complex because the person that is asking you that question clearly has no idea about your story. And when you've gone through infertility, or you are in a circumstance where you're not going to be a mom, maybe you never met the right partner, maybe single motherhood wasn't the right answer for you, maybe you have a health condition and you can't have children. Those are really personal things that it's hard to open up to tell a stranger about that. And then you also have this fear of, am I going to come off as flippant or angry if I respond in a way that startles the person who asked the question? So we oftentimes put ourselves in a place where we feel really uncomfortable for fear of making somebody else feel uncomfortable. Yeah. And it becomes this thing where you don't see who you are. The way someone else feels, of course, is important. We're humans. We don't want to purposely cause anyone, to feel uncomfortable, but at whose expense? And so I created something called the top 27 things people say when you're childless and how to respond, because I found there were so many things as I was working with my clients that they would come to me and be like, this person said this, or I ran into so-and-so from high school at the grocery store, and right away, she's asking about kids. And I found that so many women feel paralyzed in how to respond to that. And it's important to get a story together, not only about how do you want to respond, but more so when somebody asks that question to you, how do you see yourself? And for a long time, I saw myself as an outsider. I saw myself as somebody who was not normal because I didn't have kids. And it seemed like heading off a conversation with that question was just a magnifying glass on me. So understanding when somebody brings a question like that to you, or gives you advice like, pray on it, it'll happen, or relax. And, my cousin's sister's best friend's little so-and-so got pregnant at 62, and, all these stories, you
who wants to be pregnant at 62?
Yeah. And you're just like, okay, people just want to give you hope. And I do believe, like, really in my heart of hearts, people want to make us feel better, and that's their way of consoling us. But it's hard to be somebody who looks at yourself as somebody that other people see as needing of consolation. It's that feeling of pity was so hard for me, because I was used to always being this like vibrant, together, easy to figure it out type of person. And when somebody found out I wasn't a mom, to automatically be put in this category of a sympathy card or a pity, it was really hard for me. So getting your story together and being like, okay, yes, this is something you wanted. Yes, you wish that you could say, I have 3, but you can't. So because of that, how do you want to view yourself in this conversation? And getting this backstory together of realizing that you are still worth having a conversation with, even if you don't have that common element of kids.
Oh, man. I love how you've helped reframe that, how you see yourself when you're answering these questions. Man, that is really powerful. Yes.
Yeah. Because so much of the way that we show up in the world is based on the reflection we see in the mirror. And
Yes.
if you see yourself as somebody who's the oddball or somebody, who isn't confident, whatever it is, that's the way you're going to show up.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And that's what you're going to reflect back to the people around you. And I think that's just and I love how you came up with that list of 27. I mean, the fact that there's 27 is like, geez Louise, we've got one.
Actually, someone else came to me with something new the other day in one of my coaching calls. And I was like, shoot, now I got to rebrand and say top 28.
It's an in process growing list. It's alive and growing.
I'll send a link to it.
Yes.
To you. So if someone who's listening, if you want to put it in the show notes or whatever, I'll send it to you because it also gives you ideas for how to respond. Because if you're not working with a coach or a therapist or somebody that can help you process that, maybe you'll take away from it some ideas of, ways that you can represent yourself in those type of conversations.
I love that. That's so good. And that's really a great way. And if you're in a space where you feel like you still need to have some healthy boundaries around things you're working through, this is going to give you a great guide to help you do that. But thank you so much for that. I love that framing that you put around that. All right. You and I have talked about this before in terms of this work you do is important. You've done the work on yourself. You know your value. There's still an emotional toll to it because you're continually talking about this hard season you had to move through, heal from. I don't know if heal, I hesitate to use the word heal. I think it's move forward from. Grow, move forward from, continue to know that you could have a thriving, full, happy life. But it also keeps you in kind of this space of always a reminder of this season that you went through. So talk to me about, in terms of the emotional, mental, physical health, the things that help you so that doesn't keep you stuck in that season.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought this up because a lot of people ask me that, how do you relive this thing that was so traumatic for you day after day? And I think what's really important is being able to look at myself and have compassion for how I showed up at that time in my life. And when I have moments that take me back to, getting bad news or getting a call from my reproductive endocrinologist with, the fact that nothing fertilized, or the whole cycle that I had just done the last month was for nothing because there was no result of anything. And ways that I responded, I look back at myself and I remind myself, I did the best that I could with where I was at that time.
Yeah.
And now I'm at a different level in my resources, the things that I have worked through, the connections to people that I have made, because when you're going through fertility treatments, many people might be surprised to learn there are very few people that are out there offering you help. And it's what really gets me jazzed about amplifying my message, because when you're going through those times, to not have a therapist offered to you or to not have any type of mental health resources, not even a Facebook group or a book, those are some of the most trying times in your life. And you don't know what to do except to be in survival mode. So if I can look back at the way that I responded to some people, or even in my relationship with my husband, and how I often, carry a lot of guilt for, I'm like, God, I never checked in on him because I was so working to keep myself breathing and existing every day. And I have to look back at myself and say, you did the best that you could.
Yeah.
And if you had these resources, then it would have been different.
Yeah.
But, it's like when a baby starts to crawl and they fall, are you yelling at them because they can't walk yet? Or when they're crawling, they're trying to walk. You can't shame someone for something that they did not have access to. And so for me, it's this constant reminder when memories are triggered by somebody else's experience, and that parallel, right? The thing that you thought you're the only one who you went through that, or had that emotion, or responded in a certain way during heartbreaking times in your life, to be like, that was all I had available to me. And I'm proud of me for being here and moving through that to get to a point where I prioritized myself at this point in my journey too.
Thank you for that. I love that so much. And that really goes into your ability to not only show up unapologetically yourself, but supporting other women in doing so. That's really a key component. Like, we need to not feel like we have to apologize because this didn't happen. But there is so much because of the societal pressures, the cultural pressures, our own wishes and dreams, all these things. There is that ability to just feel like you're in continual apologizing mode. And you and I talked about this the first time we recorded, how you felt sad about your husband not being a father. You felt sad about your in-laws not being grandparents.
Yeah.
And your father-in-law just sent you this simple message one day after listening to one of your podcast episodes that I think it doesn't have to always be the big grandiose things. It's just those reminders from those we love. And he just said, we would never be disappointed in you. And the lift that gave you, but also just a reminder too of like, life is complex and nuanced. And we as women tend to feel like we've got to apologize for the person across the street that fell down because we think we looked at them cross-eyed. They didn't even know we were there. So, I mean, that's an extreme, but we are very prone to this culturally anyway. So your ability now to show up unapologetically and help other women in doing so is so key. And you, like I said, you do this in so many ways. And now you've added to that with the Other's Day brunch, with your new book. It's just more resources, more ways to help women navigate this. And we've talked about before how, and I'm still shocked by this. And so if you are someone who works with women trying in the fertility journey and they have resources available, get Lana's book. Let them know about the Other's Day brunch. Let them know there's a community out there that exists that knows understands, can relate to, can connect with what's happening. Provide therapists. Make this a holistic experience. We have to do better by women and their partners in this arena. And so, like so many women, you're like, there's a missing element here. By golly, I'm going to do my own work and I'm going to fix that. And I'm going to be a resource for that. And so you've done that. But talk to me about that's next step with the book. But also, first off, I want to give a huge shout out to the Other's Day brunch. As we're recording, that's going to come up 9 days from today, I believe, if I'm doing the math right. And you now have women that are traveling from across the country to be present for this. This is such an invitation for women to be in community and show up unapologetically with each other, but you're providing a safe space for them to start that. Maybe they haven't had anyone before that they could connect with in this way. And you're celebrating them. On the day before, you always do this on Saturday so that on Sunday, you can still, if your mother's still alive, your grandmother, whatever, your sister, you can still celebrate those other mothers, but that you get to feel celebrated too for being who you are in the world with people who understand your journey. This didn't start out being a nationwide event. This started and this was birthed out of kind of, if I remember correctly, the first time you did it was a pretty quick, we're going to throw this together and do this kind of thing. So talk to me about this journey with this.
Yeah. So it was, I remember, well, I'll tell you why I know now, but I remember it was like sometimes in late April, I had gone to Target and the aisles had, the Mother's Day banners, and I have a mother that I have a beautiful relationship with and a sister who I love. And I always host the Mother's Day brunch, for them at my house on Sunday. And I remember coming home from Target and I was like, oh my gosh, like what's going to happen in the days when they're not around to do those things, like to have that connection to Mother's Day. So I went on and I started a meetup group. I went on Meetup, which is free, so this is my encouragement to anyone who wants to do the same thing, like love it. I started a group called Childless and Child-Free Women. So women without kids. And that I just got my reminder that 4 years ago, I had just started that group. Meetup sent me like, congratulations, your group's 4 years old. And it was on the 22nd of April. So it was just a few weeks before Mother's Day. And that was the only way I really knew how to find other people who maybe had wanted to come, because I really wasn't connecting with many women in the Chicagoland area where I live. Mm-hmm. And there was, I want to say like 18 women showed up. Mm-hmm. And my group is now, my meetup group has 670 some members.
Wow.
So that's in 4 years, 670 some members. That doesn't mean all of them come to everything, but that's that's how many people felt connected enough to join this group. So again, if you're listening, do one in your town. I encourage you. There's probably people out there that are wishing you would. So the Other's Day brunch, the first one was in 2022. We're now coming on our fourth one. And yes, women have come throughout the years. The second year is when I started having people come in from out of town. So someone came from Puerto Rico, Nebraska, Kansas, Alabama. So this year we've got people coming from Massachusetts all the way to Seattle. So literally coast to coast, Colorado, New Jersey. I mean, it's just, it blows my mind, but it doesn't, that women are willing to get on an airplane and walk into a room where they know nobody. Like maybe they've seen me on social media. Maybe, they've heard my podcast, whatever it is, but the courage it takes to walk into a room that is unfamiliar, but the fact that you're settled, knowing that when you walk in, you don't have to feel like an outsider. I think that's really what gets people gravitating to go, is that they know that they're going to be accepted. They know that they don't have to worry about dodging the questions or using one of the top 27 things or an answer, that they're not going to encounter any of that. They're going to just walk into a room that is embracing of them. And the vibe of the environment is in the brunch is very high energy. And I tell people, if you want to talk about why you're here, you are welcome to, but it is not a requirement. Like for me, I want women to not have to come in leading with a story that makes them feel sad. And I want them to walk in feeling like, okay, like you're awesome. I'm awesome. Like one girl started a book club out of people she met last year. And I was like, that's what this is all about, is me not always having to hold the keys to the castle. Like I want everyone to be a key holder, like I want everyone to feel like they have a part in my community that I'm just the founder of. And you talked about earlier in the show that people don't always have access to travel in. Well, I also have ambassadors. So it's been kind of a, litmus test to see, like, do people want to go in their own local communities?
Yeah. So I love this idea of the ambassadorship and letting this is women showing up unapologetically defined, where it's like, I'm here, I'm the founder, but let's give everybody license to create and expand beyond beyond these Chicago borders.
Yeah. So the ambassador program is still kind of in its testing phase. I've done it in a couple cities in years past, and it's just finding the person who's willing to do the heavy lift. Cause I'll be honest, it's a lot of work, to find a location, get people there, keep people in communication. I always do in my in-person, in Chicago, I do beautiful gift bags and swag bags. So people can leave with some treats from me and some local businesses. So it's a heavy lift, I'll be honest. But if somebody is willing to do those things and create community in their community, like I'm all for it.
Yeah. And I think it's such an example to these women that come from out of town that don't know anyone, to know they can walk in the room and just be who they are. No explanation required. They don't even have to mention that season in their life if they don't want to, or they can and know that someone's understood. They just get to be them. Like there's not this overlying umbrella of expectation.
Yeah. The thing about Other's Day, I don't know if we talked about this before, is yes, it's primarily women who don't have children, but I also opened it up to women who've lost their mom or have an estranged relationship with their mom. And actually someone came last year whose daughter has chosen not to have her in her life. And it's really an expanded event. And I make it clear to everybody. I send a lot of emails out, like warning people, this is not a place to ask questions, because that person who doesn't have their daughter in their life might want to talk about the fact, that she has children. And we've got to park those things at the door. And in order to facilitate conversation, because oftentimes people don't know what to talk about if it's not about your family, or if somebody who's there, who's childless, don't ask somebody, oh, what are you doing tomorrow? Are you going to see your mom tomorrow? We can't lead with those type of assumptive questions.
I love this idea of including women who are in a variety of chapters and seasons in their life where Mother's Day applies to them. And you started to show us something that you have, that you help women in these, like, okay, there's some things we're just not going to ask about today. There's some things that we've got to keep off the table, and assumptions. So talk a little bit more about how you help women with that going into it.
So it's really important to me when people come to the Mother's Day brunch, obviously, that it's not a triggering event for them, so that people who might be coming there who have children but have an estranged relationship with the child, or they have a strange relationship with their mother and they feel called to come to the brunch, that they don't ask those of us who are childless questions, and vice versa. That one of us who don't have children don't ask, like, oh, are you going to see your mom tomorrow? So what I've decided to do is I created this sheet that everyone gets when they come in, and it says, would she rather? And you get to know people like, oh, go out or stay home, stay up late, wake up early, and kind of ask questions that then lead to other conversations. So, oh, you wake up early, oh, you go to the gym. Oh, what gym? Whatever the case might be. So there's a whole host of questions. Dance floor or hit the couch? Like, how fun is that one? And then the goal is to connect with women and learn about them and their preferences and things that they like to do, and connect on a different level. And then once you complete a whole sheet with someone, it could be like one person that you do it with. Then I have this raffle that I do with items, and then people can drop their completed sheets in there and then be entered to win things like Versace perfume. Versace donated 3 full-size bottles of perfume. Then I've got like Yeti clubs. I've got free coaching classes with me, different things. So it really encourages people to get to know one another on a different level.
I love that. And it reminds me of why we decided to introduce guests by their character traits rather than what they do. It's like, let's get to know these women as people, not these roles and titles, especially around Mother's Day, where there's so much of a cultural expectation of what motherhood is, looks like, what it means, in terms of your life story, all of those things, to get to know the people and and you described yourself as a connector, collaborator, and passionate. And this is all of that. This is all of that in this nutshell. I think that this is I love this. It allows women to come in as who they are and feel safe. And when you can go in and feel safe as you are, right where you are, it opens the door to like, wait a minute, there is a whole group of us that are valuable and have so much to offer the world. And this one season doesn't take away from that and doesn't minimize anything about us, but it takes that community. And I think the craving that these women have for these connections is modeled by the fact that they will travel in from out of town to be part of something like this. So I think that's amazing. And I'm excited to see too, where the ambassadorship piece comes from. I think you've tapped into something without even maybe fully realizing it 4 years ago. That's going to be so important for women
I'm working on the trademark.
Be able to connect.
Because I'm not going to let Hallmark
great idea.
get any royalties.
No.
I'll bet you they're going to hear about this. And we're like, oh, we're going to start Other's Day cards. So Lana Manikowski has already applied for the trademark. So don't you even think about it.
Nice. I love it. Let us know when that goes. That's, when you've got that patented and safe. Yeah. I think that's so important. I'm so glad you pointed that out. This takes a lot of your resources and energy. But you talk about sponsorships. It sounds like the Chicago community itself has really embraced this event.
They have. And even to the space where I'm holding it this year, for the last 3 years, I've held it in a different location, and there was a conflict this year and the space wasn't going to be available. And I was in this panic because I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what if it's not as beautiful? Da, 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 da. And then I had to self-care tip 101, slow myself down and tell myself things always have a way of working out. And one day I'm going to have a solution presented to me, and it is just going to be like, oh, wow, that wasn't as hard as I thought. So as life unfolds that way for me, I always try to remind myself that I'm resourceful and I always figure it out. I was introduced to a woman who works at a building. I live, like I said, in downtown Chicago, so in the land of high rises. And the building she works at has an event space, and somebody connected us. A childless woman connected us, and told her about my event. And I went to see the space. And while I was there, I was like, this is beautiful. Like, oh my gosh, like I can't even believe this is available. What's the rental price? Come to find out, she's childless. And she was so touched by the message and the connection point of the Other's Day brunch that she was able to negotiate a deal for me to have it in that room in this building called the Aqua, which is an award-winning building in Chicago. If someone's listening, just Google the Aqua in Chicago and you'll see it's like a gorgeous high rise. And I was like, my gosh, like now she's coming to the brunch, it's like she never even knew about the brunch. And now not only did she help me create a place to have the brunch, she felt called to the message and she's going to be part of the brunch. And I'm like, this is just a part of, you never know who is out there with a story that you haven't heard yet.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Again, this is living unapologetically and supporting other women in doing so and being able to 101. Thank you so much. So good. Okay. We're going to get into more that you have out there, and within that, we're going to talk about coming back to your why and your values and everything you do. These are very tightly, very woven into the fabric of everything you're doing now. And now we have a book. So talk to me about how that you knew that was the natural next step and how that ties into the why and values of your work.
Well, when I left my 7-year journey through fertility treatments, my last conversation with my reproductive endocrinologist, which is basically they train to be an OBGYN, and then they go on to do another 3-year training to help become a fertility doctor, essentially, but it's called a reproductive endocrinologist. So that's a mouthful there, but he offered me some solutions if I wanted to continue on with fertility, treatments. He said, I'll help you with that, but I'll be honest, with the yield that you've been getting out of the treatments, I just don't think it's going to bring you to a different point. But if you want to adopt, or if you want to do donor conception, like a donor egg, we can help you with that. It's a big decision. Think about it. Let us know. So we left that conversation with thinking about it. And then when we decided that none of those answers were right for us, we had no reason to call the clinic back, and the doctor never called us, or no one followed up with us to say, hey, where are you? Where are you in the decision process? Do you need some help? Do you need some assistance? So that was where the conversation ended. And I had to figure all of this out on my own, because there was not even a referral for a therapist. And
that still blows my mind.
Doesn't it? I know. And I'm like,
yeah, you were in such a vulnerable state at that point. It feels dangerous that they don't offer other resources leaving that day.
And I thought, maybe it was just my clinic. Like maybe he saw me as someone who seemed strong, like, I don't know. I had all these thoughts in my head of making excuses for them not doing more for me. Cause, that's what we do as women, we're like, oh, well, maybe it was me.
Yeah.
So I decided to write a book in the hopes that it will give the physicians and the fertility clinics a resource that might not exist. Cause I'm like, okay, I learned that early on. One of my first bosses, I was living in Washington, DC. I remember going to him with, I guess a complaint or something that I didn't think was going well. And he said, I love that you're telling me this. Now leave and come back with some solutions. And that always stuck with me. It was like, okay. And he told me it doesn't have to be the perfect solution, but it trained me to say, okay, if things aren't going the way that I want to see, what would I do? How could I make an impact in that situation? So that's really the basis and the foundation of why I even started all that I did. But the book, I thought, okay, well, if they don't have a resource, if there is nobody out there that they can send a patient to when they get to that point of deciding to leave treatment, maybe they can include being childless is an okay thing too. It doesn't have to be just adoption or just continuing a path to some form of motherhood. I think the conversation needs to include, you can remain childless and we have resources to support you there too. So that's why I wrote the book. So now what?
I love it.
And my goal is to get it in the hands of as many doctors to then put it on a resource list. And, my podcast has been around since 2021. Maybe it's a reminder too that there's a podcast that somebody can listen to. And I purposely named it So Now What, because my podcast is also the So Now What podcast. But because so many times in this journey, I've wondered so now what am I going to do? Life is turning out so different. Like now what's going to come at me? How am I going to figure this one out? So it's really the guide that I wish somebody had given me when I left my treatment path without a baby.
Wow. We're going to have, we had a Substack live a few weeks ago. We've shared that. We're going to share. It was fun. It was fun. And it's a way I love to bring our authors on and talk about their books. And we're going to have book club opportunities through that over time too. So pay attention, listeners. If you don't follow our Substack, jump onto our at Embracing Layers Substack to follow that. At the F.E.E.L Podcast Substack. The Embracing Layers Network is what it's called. Anyway, you look up the Embracing Layers Network, you'll find it. But it is such doctors, practitioners, nurses, people that tell these clinics, these places about this book, about this resource. It's so important that, and maybe they won't be ready to face that yet or read that yet when they walk out the door, but they have it when they are. Yes. And, because I think that's so important to not wait until you're in crisis mode to have resources, but have resources up front that are ready for you when you're ready for them. I think that's such an important piece of being able to have that part of it. And then reminding them, listen, we've got all these other resources. You can work with me as a coach if you need one-on-one attention. You can listen to the podcast so that you can get more resources, more voices, realize you're not alone in this journey. We've got this great Others Day brunch. I mean, it's such an invitation into all of these pieces, but so many times when we're first starting out, we're not ready necessarily to be with other people and talk about it when we go through hard things. And so a book is a great way to kind of introduce yourself to the conversation, to the thought process, and gives you something tangible.
Yeah.
And then you can start listening to some podcast episodes and, I think it's just such a great door into your community, this additional piece.
Yeah. And I wrote it in a way that you don't have to read it cover to cover. The way the chapters are formatted, you could just, look through the table of contents and be like, oh, I have a baby shower coming up and I'm really not sure how to handle going to it, or if I want to go to it, or if I'm going to decline. and you can read the chapter on baby showers. Like they're very small, palatable chapters. And I purposely wrote that because I'm not somebody who would pick up a book and read it cover to cover on a Saturday. Like I'll go back to it here and here and here. And the chapters are maybe 4 or 5 pages long. There's 20 some chapters. And I purposely did that so that it's just very digestible. And my story, it's not necessarily about me. My story is woven in there to just create these common connection points. And you don't need to read the chapters in order because there's not like a storyline that's going with it. So I think it's very easy for the reader to take from it what they're looking for. And, I tell people all the time, even if you haven't gone through fertility treatments, maybe you're childless by circumstance and the parts about fertility clinics are not relevant to you. That's cool too. You can read other things.
Yeah.
And I had a girlfriend from college who I had posted on my Facebook page that wrote a book, and she's like, "Oh, I ordered your book just to support you." And I read it, and she has a son who's in his 20s who's got severe autism. And she's like, it related so much to me because my life didn't turn out like I thought. Like my motherhood journey and the way that I thought my children were going to be able to interact in society is different. And I love that people who never went through fertility treatments and people who have kids can even find something through it. So it really, I wasn't expecting that part of it. So that was definitely a bonus for me.
Yeah, I think so too. And that really goes nicely into living out of our own expectations versus others. This expectation of like, oh, this is in this aisle at the bookstore, so it must only be for that. That you spoke to a group at a college last week that you're like, I don't know if anybody out here in this university audience has my experience, but I know what I have to say is going to serve them because these tools and resources that I have found really cross into different areas and subject matters.
Yeah. My title of my talk is Infertility, Identity, and the Fight to be Seen. And what I really talked about was, how do you see yourself? And the identity that you have and that you create for yourself is what other people are going to take from you. And you can't wait for somebody to see you in the lens that you want to be seen. You have to see yourself in that lens first. Like we touched on that at the beginning of this episode, right? You can't expect someone to see you and see your story if you're not seeing it yourself in the way that you want to see it. So it was really powerful. I wasn't sure how people would take it because I'm so used to talking in communities where people have navigated fertility or infertility in some way, shape, or form, but I've gotten really good feedback on it. So it makes me want to do more keynote speaking and find opportunities to make a connection. Like my story just happens to be infertility, and for somebody else, it could be getting divorced. They never thought that they would, and they carry shame about divorcing. Maybe it's, having a kid who's an addict and people look at you like you're a bad mom because if you were a better mom, you would have, done better raising your kids. There are so many stories that you can just kind of insert into this and realize that your identity is what you create for yourself and you identify it for yourself.
I love that so much. And I said it the first time you said it, but I think it's such a great and healthy way of we get to decide. And then also the way we show up, communicating that. And if someone tries to impose a different identity or expectation on us, you're like, no. This is how I see myself. This is how I view my life and my value and how I show up in the world, and communicating that piece as well. But so much people feel when you know your value, when you have that contentment within who you are. People can sense it when you walk in a room. I mean, they really can. Body language has so much more power than sometimes I think that we realize in terms of people deciding what they think we are versus what we know we are. And of course, those things can be misunderstood at times and misidentified. Surely that's true. But also people can feel your energy. Do you walk tall? Do you have your head up? Are you looking people in the eye? Are you not afraid to say what you have said? Are you talking quietly? Are you talking, engagingly? I mean, all those little things. And it starts with you in that identity piece. And that identity piece is knowing who you are, defining who you are, believing who you are, becoming who you want to be, defining that for yourself, and not allowing others around you to do that. And that it takes, that takes some concerted effort and energy, especially when you've gone through a really difficult season where you come out of it not where you thought you were going to be. But it's so important in order for you to move forward in a solid, healthy way. And look at the impact you're making right now. Like, you are helping thousands of women. And that really goes nicely into that accepting the layered aspects of yourself. Mm-hmm. No, this is not how I saw my journey going. These are not the dreams I had when I was a girl growing up. But boy, it's different, but it is beautiful. And the impact I'm able to have is something I could have never imagined.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of us, we have these belief systems, and we often are taking belief systems handed down to us, maybe from our, family values, maybe from religious values, educational values. And we think that there's a right way and a wrong way. And it's hard when you have always been taught to think the people without kids are like sad, like, oh, they probably, who's going to take care of them when they get older? Or, do they have anywhere to go for Christmas? Do they, there's this vision that you think of people without kids, like fitting into this box. And so when you become that person, it's no wonder that you look at yourself and being like, I am somebody that probably people pity, or my life does feel really incomplete, or I do worry about getting older because I might die old and alone in a nursing home. And you have to challenge that belief system. And whether it's about infertility and being childless, or whatever circumstance is giving you angst, and decide, are those outdated beliefs? Are those the ones that I want to take forward? And you can create your own belief system, but no one ever tells us that we can. And it's like, if you believe in God, like, you don't see God, you just believe that God is with you. So who to say that is the thing that, without seeing it, so many of us believe in God. So how can you not say that you can't create another belief for yourself without physically having to see, feel, touch, taste, whatever, that thing that you're wanting for your life? So for me, it was really a powerful awareness, and something that I teach in my community is you can believe whatever you want about your story. And when you tell your story, do you feel energized by the way you describe yourself and you describe your life? Or do you feel disempowered?
Yeah.
And people don't tell us that we can tell a story that sounds different than what most people are used to hearing.
Yeah. That was so good. Thank you for that. That is, I think it's just that realization that we have choice, that we have a choice. We don't have to be stuck in a narrative when we realize this is no longer serving me, or this really was never true for me. We can change that. We have the power to do that within us. And I think when you go through these hard things, you learn a lot about the power you have within yourself that you're able to tap into. And I see that through and through. Talk to me about how that felt when you were able to tap into that and and reframe the idea you had about what you thought your life was going to be versus what it turned out to be.
Well, I never knew what life coaching was until 2020. And I stumbled upon it, honestly, by chance. I had gained a lot of weight from the fertility medications, and my last round of IVF was in 2017. I had kind of given up on my body because I was like, well, hell, it doesn't work anyway. So why should I care for it. I felt like, I remember I wouldn't take any supplements. I wouldn't do calcium, like none of these vitamins, nothing. I felt like I was totally on a picket line against my body. And I gained a ton of weight because of the medications, and then just, sort of compounded from there. And I had found this woman's podcast. Her name is Corinne Crabtree, and her podcast is called Losing 100 Pounds with Corinne. And she tells her story about weight loss. And it just resonated with me. Like the way she talked about weight loss felt so normal instead of counting keto calorie, all this stuff. I had done Weight Watchers for so many times, and I knew that 28 chips was 3 points. Like I had done all, I knew all the calculations for what food weight was, and I had my Weight Watchers scale. And the way she talked about it was understanding, like, why are you not showing up for yourself the way that you want to feel? Like realizing that I had something to do with it. The food had nothing to do with it. It was me. And it was just like this light bulb went off. And that's really the first person that told me that I could believe something different about my life. And I found out later she was a life coach. I was listening to something on her podcast, and she said something about being a life coach. And I had to Google. I'm like, okay, what is life coaching? And then this light bulb went off, and I was like, I need to do this for women who are childless after infertility. Like there's no one who's teaching these kind of things. And it's like, once you learn this stuff, you don't forget it, and it's replicable, and, you can replicate it in so many different places in your life. And I remember literally, Melissa, like people would come to me and be like, oh my gosh, like you're glowing. Like multiple people in multiple settings. Like it wasn't like it just happened all in 1 week. And it brought me to the place of when you hear someone's glowing, it's usually what this pregnancy glow, right? Like, and you're glowing. Like, and I thought to myself, how amazing is it that this reference of glowing is something that is happening for me, and my body has never ever been pregnant. Like the fact that people are seeing that on me and describing me in that way, it was just like this mind-blowing thing of like energy that I need to help other women understand how great it feels to know who you are and to be in ownership of your story, and to stop looking at yourself like a victim after what you've been through. Like, can you have compassion? There's a chapter in my book that talks about self-compassion versus self-pity, because there is such a distinctive line between looking at your life with pity instead of compassion. So that's the energy that propelled me forward when I started hearing like, gosh, you're glowing. What's going on with you? And that's when I was working with Corinne, and I was learning all the tools from her that really motivated me to go get my life coaching certification and create that for other women like me.
I love the glowing story so much because it shows that there's multiple ways we can glow. And when we are living true to ourselves and tapped into who we are and accepting the layered aspects of ourselves and meeting it with compassion, meeting it with curiosity rather than judgment, that's possible. There's multiple ways we can glow and shine and show up in the world. And thank you so much for that. That was so good. All right. In Living Out F.E.E.L, which you do beautifully, finding empowerment, embracing layers, talk to me. And because I know, a lot of times this journey takes a toll on relationships and your relationship with yourself, which you've talked about already, and what you had to go through to get to the other side of that, of no longer seeing your body as being against you, and recreating that relationship with your body and yourself. But also has impact on other relationships, whether it's your husband, your parents, your friends. So talk to me about this embracing this F.E.E.L journey that you have, how that is reshaped and framed through your relationship with yourself, as well as your relationship with other people in your life. And you've talked about this a lot in other ways, but I want to really hone in on this point for a minute.
Yeah, well, it's one of the 3 pillars in my coaching program called Thrive After Infertility. The body image is one, owning your time. Like, what do you do when you thought your rest of your life was going to be milestoned by having a child, and all of a sudden you're the one in charge of filling your time? And then the third one's relationships, and relationships inclusive of your marriage, people at work, in the workplace, and showing up to work where we spend at least 40 hours of our week. And
Yeah.
you can't necessarily always escape the baby announcements, the shower, baby showers in the office, the pictures of people's kids, the morning water cooler talk about, who did what with their kids the night before. And you're showing up and you're like, don't feel like a connected part in your workplace, but then also in your family. I recently, I call her my little cousin because she's in her 30s, but she just had her first baby. And I met her baby for the first time this past weekend. And I was a little nervous going into it, not because I wasn't sure how I would handle it, but more so I felt like everyone was waiting to see my reaction. And it was a really interesting place to be because I think, I remember when she got pregnant, people didn't tell me right away. And there was this like yin and yang of like being upset that people would think I was not strong enough to hear it, but also seeing that they care about me and they maybe weren't sure how I would handle the news. So the relationships are multifaceted. And I think a lot of it is really the coaching aspect, and the work that I do with my clients is understanding, how do you want your relationship to look? How do you want it to be? Because unless you know what you're looking for or have this framework of some sort put into place, you're chasing something in the wind, because you don't exactly know what you're looking for. So nothing is ever going to kind of match up to it. So I think it's really important to decide, what do you want your marriage to be like? What do you want Christmas morning with your family or at your mom's house or when you go to your cousins? Like, what do you want that interaction to be like? How do you create a plan for yourself when you don't know what success looks like for you?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's really, I think what the relationships part is, understanding what are you looking for? And does that already maybe exist in a different form and you haven't even identified it? And then the other part is communicating what you need. I think we have this expectation that people should act a certain way, but if you haven't given them the opportunity to know what you're looking for, it's hard to know like how I should show up. There's a concept that I teach in my coaching program called the instruction manual. And how we have this instruction manual for how people are supposed to show up. But if they haven't read the instruction manual, they don't know how it works.
Yeah.
And being able to share that with someone, and that doesn't mean that they have to say, okay, like I'll show up that way. Like they have the entitlement to say, yeah, that works with me, or no, it doesn't. But oftentimes when you don't tell someone in a relationship with you or in communion with you how you want things to go or how you would feel more comfortable being, then it's a losing battle for them, because they're always going to be the person who doesn't understand, or the person who says the wrong thing, or the person who's selfish. And, there's so many things that become disappointing when you're not able to structure out what you're looking for yourself.
Yeah, that communication piece is huge. We operate under a lot of assumptions sometimes, and to the point of like, people are not mind readers. And we forget that. We're like, well, and we feel like, well, I'm putting out this energy. They must know. No, assume they know nothing and operate from there. And we just talked about this in an episode that dropped a couple of days ago here. Communication is kind. Communication doesn't leave people guessing. And we talked, Comfort Woods and I talked about that a lot in our episode. And I think this is just another example of that manifesting. And again, goes back to that choice piece. We have choices. Tap into what it is you want. Tap into it as what you're hoping for. And then communicate that so it's possible, so it can happen. And you're not just left with everybody being frustrated trying to figure out and walking on eggshells too. I mean, take away all of those things and be clear in communication is kind. I love that so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And the last thing I like to always do an addendum to this, that doesn't mean that you can't have boundaries. So if somebody does not meet you where you want them to be or where you feel comfortable meeting them, it's okay for you to say, like, I'm going to step away from this, or this does not work for me anymore. And I think the boundary piece, whenever you feel as though something does not feel good in your body or good to you, it's important to know that you don't always have to be the one to compromise. And you don't have to worry if you're the one who's disappointing somebody, because disappointing yourself is it takes such a larger toll on you to continually show up disappointing yourself for fear of not disappointing others.
Yeah. I am so glad you said that. I think the first agreement you need to make with yourself when you're doing this work of wanting to live out your most authentic, healthy life, true to you, in alignment, is making an agreement with yourself that you will not knowingly abandon yourself anymore. Sometimes it happens and you got to give yourself grace. You're used to showing up certain ways. People are used to you showing up in certain ways. It takes time to shift those narratives and get them in alignment with where you want them to be. But making that commitment, write it down somewhere. You put it in your journal, put it in a prominent place, record it, something that really, because it really starts with, okay, am I abandoning myself in any way here? I think that's such an important piece. Thank you for bringing that up. That's so good. All right. We are down to the rapid fire. Name 5 activities that nourish you.
Ooh, 5 activities that nourish me. Walking my dog, going on random weekend trips with my hubby. That's a lot of times we'll get in the car on Saturday and just kind of run off together. Nourish me, I think creating community for others. So that connection piece really nourishes me. My physical activity, doesn't have to be like a workout class, but just getting out and about and just feeling like I'm part of the city around me, like living in a big city, is important to me. And then I think also just connecting with myself and seeing myself, because for so long I felt invisible in my own life and in my story. So the opportunity to see myself and recognize me for who I am.
I love that so much. So good. All right. And 5 words on how you want to feel the next 6 months.
Oh, 5 words the next 6 months. I want to feel meaningful. I want to feel, let's see, at peace. I think that's another one, at peace. I want to feel successful. I want to feel proud. And I want to be peaceful. Feel peaceful. At peace.
I love that. Oh, Lana, so good. So much good content here today. I'm so excited for our ladies and our listeners to have access to this. This will all be on our resources page, and many of these resources already are. We will update with this new, even more wonderful resources that Lana has when this episode drops, but you can go to embracinglayers.com to find that on the resources page. But tell people right now where they can find you, follow you, get access to all the things that you offer.
Yeah, well, probably the most comprehensive place is on my website, lanamanikowski.com. And I'm on Substack. I'm on YouTube and on TikTok, but most actively on Instagram. So my handles are I try to keep them the same, lana.manikowski. So it's easy for everyone to find me there. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Thank you, my friend, for how you show up in the world. You are a beacon of light, and you are a beacon of light in a way you didn't see coming. And I think there's some beauty in that, in the complexity and nuance of life. And it's also a reminder to ladies, you're listening, life is going to throw us curveballs. And sometimes they are really tough ones that are hard to get up off the mat. but you can. And even if your thing that you feel like took you out is different than infertility, Lana's have got some great resources, like we talked about earlier in the episode, that really transfer across life. And they're really applicable in multiple ways. So if you heard anything from her today that resonated, reach out to her, because these resources really do cross into many different areas of life. But I want really to take away from this week, make a commitment to you to not abandon yourself whenever you're making decisions for your life. And that's going to help you to make decisions that are aligned and healthy for you, and know that you're valuable and worthy, not because of your roles and titles, but because of who you are. And there you have a purpose. You have, and you may not even know what that is right now. That's okay. You still have value. You're still so important in this world. And so that's really the takeaway that I hope you can bring from this today. Thank you, my friend, for joining me. I'm so excited to hear about how this next Mother's Day brunch goes here in 9 days, and to have you back and do a book club with your book on our Substacks. I think that's going to be a really great opportunity as well. So stay tuned. There's more from this wonderful woman coming. We've got panels coming up later in the year that are going to be talking about the infertility journey that I'm going to be inviting Lana back on. She might be hearing that for the first time right now. I can't remember if I told her.
I'll be there.
Okay.
Say no more. Count me in.
Yes. But yes, so she will continue to be a resource and a light here on our network. And I'm so thankful to know you, and so thankful that you reached out to me, on a DM on Instagram a couple of years ago, and what that's created. You just never know where these things are going to lead. So thanks so much, ladies, for listening, and all those that are listening this week. You don't have to be ladies. Yes, this is for women. There's content applies across the board. Thanks so much for giving us some of your time. Take good care and have a great rest of your day. Hello, Melissa Crook here. Thank you so much for joining us on the F.E.E.L Podcast today, Finding Empowerment, Embracing Layers. I hope you found today's framework and resources supportive and informative. To learn more about all that we offer here at the Embracing Layers Network, visit embracinglayers.com. You can go to our contact form to schedule me as a speaker for your next conference, workshop, or seminar. You can go to our book page to order our book that Jessica Garrison, our wonderful and talented writer and author, authored with my support. And engage with this framework in written form, with your journal, or in a book club with other women, inviting them on this journey with you. You can look at our resources page for all of the helpful and insightful resources our guests offer and share. You can find the schedule for our weekly Together We Feel women's panel conversations that we're holding each Monday on our YouTube channel. And you can find the links to all the spaces and places you can follow, engage with us on social media, and join our engagements that are happening on our Substack site. There is also a donation page where you can donate to support our work to ensure we can continue to bring you these incredible guests, conversations, and support. Thanks again for joining me this week. Share with your friends and give us a review on your favorite listening platform. Your feedback helps us ensure we're bringing you the content that will best support you in having an empowered, embracing layers journey. Take good care, and thanks for giving us some of your valuable time today. We truly appreciate you so deeply.